Morning all. I trust you're all well. I was having a bit of a grumble to myself yesterday, and um, I was it was on the back of my last video got choked by YouTube because it had a note attached to it, which I'm told is a way of reducing its reach. So it has so it reduced my enormous reach. So even though I was quite pleased with the video, it only mustered 350 views or so. Um, and when people do send me messages, often they say, "Well, I haven't heard from you for a while," or "If you've not been making videos," or "It's nice to see you back," or so. This is frustrating, and it got me. You know, it vexed me somewhat, um, and so incidentally, this is a good time to do what other YouTubers ask and request that you like and subscribe, because I did ask that once before, and there was a noticeable uptick in the next video. Actually, curious, but you know, if you can't be bothered, don't bother. But was the thing that was getting me aggravated yesterday was, with so many of these things, is that it's just shit being English these days. It's just shit. You know, almost nothing good ever happens, and only bad things happen, or so it seems. And I was I was going to grumble at length about that, and I saw an old friend the other day, and he put an idea into my head, and I don't think he was doing it even deliberately, but what he said was, um, it wasn't anything that he said. He wasn't even perhaps making the point himself, but it made me think about it. Is that this is difficult to try and pass this. Um, it does seem like nothing good ever happens, but now, at this precise moment, I mean, not Madam here, but look, everything else, and because of there's trees in front of me and stuff, and um, and the way the camera, because there's trees in front of me, you don't get any sunshine, but you can see that it's sunny. And if I was pointing the camera the other way towards the sun, you'd see how golden it looks. And at this precise moment, there is nothing wrong. You know, it's the opposite of nothing being wrong. And I often feel this way in the spring. Is that when the sun comes out and the good weather returns, um, you can get a real uplift in your spirits. And I think particularly many English people feel this way because we hunker down for 4 5 months through the winter, and we don't get a winter that is, um, I mean, even in Scotland, not that English, but you know what I mean. Um, we seldom get a crisp, winter wonderland type of winter. You know, pristine fields of freshly fallen snow, and when the snow comes out, it picks up every little twig and branch in the woods and makes it so it looks so pretty. We don't tend to get that. What we tend to get, as usual, is, as is so often, is grey, leaden skies, drizzle, and often driving rain. In coming horizontal in the blustering conditions. It's just unpleasant to be outside. It's so unpleasant, and I mean, some people have even suggested that, and that, unfrivolously, that that may have been one of the reasons for the British Empire. That we realised that the sun came out more often elsewhere, and so my ancestors went and colonised other lands. So, but as I say, at this precise moment, things are a very, very long way from bad. It is just heaven out here. Um, so there's a tendency, there's a tendency always to think that, the political landscape is everything. And I guess it isn't. I guess it isn't. But I suppose my point of view is that we could have all this and have, a wonderful, high trust, harmonious, peaceful, just society as well. Yeah, I mean, these new announcements about dimming the sun. It does seem as if there are people out there who want to ruin everything, everything, and you would think in times past that up until really quite recently that the one thing they couldn't fuck up and they couldn't destroy was the weather. But it seems as if even that is within their sights. Sit down. So my tendency to pessimism is it feeds into that doom. Yeah, I do acknowledge this about myself. But I used to like being English. I used to like it, or I tended to think of myself as British rather than English, but English as well. But I used to like it. I used to sort of go around the world thinking, I come from a wonderful place. I come from even when I went to places that were more impressive, like the United States, for instance, or more cultured, like France, um, or had sort of more life to them, like Italy. Um, yeah, I would acknowledge that, and I would, and I would appreciate these other places, as Englishmen have done for generations, but be content with where I came from, and it's just it's a kind of grandiose idea. It's not something you can really. It's not something that has any substance to it. But I felt that because I was happy about where I came from. You could call it pride, I suppose. I had a certain amount of pride to it that our international reputation lent a certain kudos to me as an international traveller. I mean, it's difficult to try and put this into words, but I was pleased, happy, proud even to be English and to be British, and almost to be. This sounds horribly grandiose, but that by my behaviour, I might be some sort of representative of this country when I was abroad. But I haven't travelled much since I haven't travelled internationally much since since I got married, um, and I certainly don't feel that now. I certainly don't feel that now. I and particularly if I was to go to America, I would be very low key about being English, very low key. Um, and in past times, I felt confident enough to argue and debate with Americans about you know what I thought we got right, what I thought they got right, and I wasn't. Um, I didn't feel inferior. I suppose is what I'm saying, and I do now, and I do feel inferior. I mean, it's not terminal, and it's not. It's not really what's happened to us by and large isn't of our doing. Although one could say that it is our fault in the sense that populations get the governments they vote for, that they deserve. Um, and I feel this particularly keenly uh, with countries that I perceive to be more impressive and doing better than us, the United States, and this is up until fairly recently. Of course, they've got their problems as well. Germany, a very very impressive country. Japan, France, always. Italy again. Um, and there's a sort of competent efficiency about the Scandinavian countries as well. And when I compare my country to all of those countries, it comes out wanting, And considering the things that have been happening here, I don't think I'm wrong. I was watching a trigonometry episode, you know, uh, Francis Foster and Constantine Kissin, and they were interviewing Tim Pool, who I've always quite liked, and he's always seemed to be very sensible. He used to be a lefty, now isn't, and he was talking in a quite robust way about how America should move forward, and he was saying that we should move it forward in a moral way rather than a pragmatic way, rather than a practical way. And from what I could glean from what he was saying, what he meant was that it's for the greater good, which is always a tricky statement because that's what we got in COVID. But he was saying for the greater good of America, Trump should not be afraid to break some customs, break some conventions, and even break some laws and become authoritarian in order to crush the left in America, which have turned into an American. So it turned into an enemy of America. And it's funny being a kind of lefty that he's had such a transformation. Um, it's quite remarkable, really. And of course, he says he's not alone. Donald Trump was a Democrat. RFK Jr. was a Democrat. Tulsi Gabbard was a Democrat. Elon Musk was a Democrat. They were all Democrats before the Democrats went bonkers. Um, and the two hosts weren't really making they were making some criticism, but they weren't making it they weren't making some criticisms in the uh, what would you say, in the spirit of saying, well, we know what's best for America, and not at all. But Tim Pool has moved so far that he was quite almost aggressive, and he brought up what's happening in Britain, the lack of freedom of speech, and he said quite challenging, well, what are you going to do about it, to the hosts. And this is where it gets very uncomfortable. I think it's very uncomfortable for me, and I'm probably not alone, because it seems as if there's nothing we can do, short of outright violent overthrowing revolution, which seems to be, vanishingly unlikely, um, or not as unlikely as it was. Um, and of course, Tim Pool's talking from the luxury of an America where the population is armed. And of course, we gave up our guns, didn't we? We gave up our guns. You know, um, the Americans like to characterize it as we're just pussies for giving up our guns. And well, sure, you know, you could characterize it like that, and certainly that attitude has got a lot more currency now. But when we gave up our guns, I mean, we'd never had a school shooting before. We'd never had one, and then we had one, and we thought, fucking hell, yeah, all those children murdered. Um, and it didn't seem like the wrong thing to do at the time. It seemed like the decent thing to do at the time, and we were wrong to do it. And to the Americans watching, you were right, and we were wrong. Okay, there's I've no problem admitting that we were wrong to do that, and I should have protested at the time, and I didn't. But I didn't agree with gun ownership, particularly at the time. I wasn't especially anti. I thought it was unnecessary. I didn't think you needed it. How wrong was I? So he was talking to the trigonometry blokes, and he's challenging. He said, "What are you going to do about it?" It was a challenge. What are you going to do about it? What are you going to do, you pussy? And it does seem that we do have a tyrannical government. You know, it's like this theoretical issue that Americans had for being armed suddenly isn't theoretical anymore. It's here and it's real. And you know, I don't have an answer for Timple. I don't have an answer for him. What are we supposed to do? And I mean, I won't rehash the details, but anybody who's listening is British know the the unending litany of laws which are basically anti-British, anti the native population, anti-white. Um, they just keep on coming, and and foreigners and sexual freaks and the enemies of this country seem to be in charge of everything. Um, Now, I'm thinking of another interview that um, a young reporter, a young chap by the name of Stephen Edgington, uh, he was interviewing some people on Trump's, I think it was in his inauguration, whatever. And yeah, Stephen Edgington's he's a young man. He's a young man. He's doing a very good job of being a serious journalist. And it's funny because he's even grown a full beard now because I guess it probably thinks it adds to his gravitas. Because you know he is a young man. You know he's in his no more than his mid-20s, I think. But he's doing his best, and he's making quite a good fist of becoming a decent uh, journalist. And he was talking to some of these people in the inauguration party, and Matt Walsh was there. You know, the what is a woman bloke, and and I agree with Matt Walsh in a lot of things. But if I met him, I bet you I wouldn't like him. I bet you I wouldn't like him at all. And the reason I wouldn't like him is not because I disagree with him or anything, because there's precious little I do disagree with him on. But I wouldn't like him because he despises me. Now, I don't know this for a fact. You know, he's never met me. You know, but when he was talking to Stephen Edgington with his Southern English accent, and he was talking to him with contempt. It wasn't anything that he said, but it was his attitude to him. Oh, he's a weak Englishman who's allowed his country to be destroyed. So I'm just gonna, I'm just gonna completely. Um, I'm going to answer the questions. I'm not gonna say anything complimentary, um, and I'm just going to, I'm not going to make this feel better at all. This guy feel better at all. I'm just going to treat him as as the weak English man that he is. Like they're all weak Englishmen, and and the reason being English is so shit these days is because at the moment he's not wrong. It's very difficult to hold one's head up as an Englishman at this precise moment in time. It's very difficult. It's funny because Stephen Edgington actually did another interview with Steve Bannon, and it's funny because Steve Bannon wasn't at all like that. Actually, you know, Steve Bannon is one of the one of the evil bogeymen compared to my lefty lawyer friend, Steve Bannon. What a wanker. But Steve Bannon, he wasn't patronising or anything. He just said, you've been taken over by a cabal, and you've got to get it back. And his attitude was completely different, and, you know, Matt Walshall's got that very inscrutable demeanour, and he's dripping with contempt all the time. But Steve Bannon knows a lot about Britain. He knows a lot about the Constitution. He knows a lot about the Tories. So I've got a lot of respect for him. But it's not fun being English at the moment. It's not fun at all. My last video, um, if you haven't seen it, um, it was choked by YouTube because I entitled it "Why the Grooming Gangs Are Worse Than the Holocaust," and the fact that I've just said that on this video may mean that this one will get will get choked as well. But they put a little Wikipedia entry underneath it about how serious the Jewish Holocaust was, which of course is not. I wasn't denying that at all, but nuance is an alien concept to these people. And interestingly, the Wikipedia has quite rightly an entire section devoted to the Holocaust. But when I looked up in their own little search bar, grooming gangs, there isn't a separate entity for grooming gangs. It's kind of mentioned with within a much wider non-specific debate about group-based child sexual exploitation, so that the demographic angle and the racial angle and the cultural angle and the religious angle is just lost. So thankfully not many people trust Wikipedia these days, so there's something. But I suppose being English these days is to have your pride assaulted every single day, sometimes multiple times a day. I mean, maybe that's what we deserve, and maybe the crushing of our pride is what is required in order to make a snap. Quiet desperation is the English way. That was the phrase, wasn't it? And the lyric from that Pink Floyd song. This friend who visited the other day, he was saying that academic agent says that he's one of the things he says about this is that when talking about things like civil war or revolution or an uprising, or his take is that nothing ever happens. So nothing like this will ever happen. Nothing dramatic will ever happen. We'll continue as we are. But he's got a big YouTube channel. He spends all of his time and energy talking about this stuff. And if he really believes it is so hopeless, I don't know why he's wasting his breath. He recently tweeted that he thought the chance of civil war in this country was at about 0%. And I'm not saying we should delude ourselves. Of course not. That's never helpful. But I mean, that is a counsel of despair. Yeah. Um, I mean, he's got quite a big channel. Hundreds of videos, comments all the time about what's wrong and what should be done, but at the same time says nothing will be done. And but there are examples, you know, revolutions and regime changes, uprising. They sometimes come out of nowhere. I mean, nobody saw the Iranian Revolution happening. Nobody saw that coming at all. The Islamists aligned with the communists. Sound familiar? Um, Thinking they were going to just overthrow the Shah and they'd have a socialist utopia. And so they allied with the Islamists, and months later, all the communists and all the socialists were dead. And it was a very, very minority um, overthrow, really. Um, yeah, Nazi Germany was another one. Adolf Hitler didn't have popular support. He didn't have overwhelming popular support anyway. Um, it was a quirk of their political system. Now, the Americans are fortunate that they have a political system which, in this instance, with the election of Donald Trump, in this instance, has overthrown the apple cart. Because to have a president, anybody can be elected president. They don't have to be a member of the Senate or Congress or anything like that. Anybody can be president technically. Um, you can even be elected president if you just happen to be the spouse of a former president. Um, um, the fact that most presidents in the United States come from political dynasties is neither here nor there, um, but the fact is that it can happen, and in our system that can't happen. You have to be an MP before you can become prime minister. It's just the way the system works, and that seems like a massive disadvantage at the moment. But it would have had its advantages. It's had its advantage over the years. It's just at the moment that's a massive disadvantage. Being able to elect, any Tom, Dick, or Harry as president means that person might not have been indoctrinated into the political system in the way that an MP almost certainly is, unless they're very, very strong-willed. And a strong will is not something that characterises too many British politicians, to be fair. But it really is shit being English at the moment. It really is. It's the worst it's ever been in my lifetime. And as I was saying a couple of videos back, we have a pride deficit. I do think this is what is. I do think this is what is key here, because proud people can't be, they can be conquered, but they can't be eradicated. Yeah, and it doesn't take many people to take, and I'm not suggesting any moral uprightness on these people, but a small band of dedicated patriots, you could call them, in Northern Ireland kept one of the most professional armies in the world on the hop for 25 years. I mean, the number of Irish Republican terrorists was really quite small, considering their impact. The French resistance was quite small. And I would imagine also that the American revolutionaries at the time were relatively small. Um, and what they did, of course, was impressive. Um, they beat the world's greatest empire, which nobody had done up until that point. I mean, I suppose the thing is, this is real life out here. Yeah, it's as real as it gets. And the online world is what it is, I suppose. Um, and I spoke to another friend of mine recently, and he was someone who we've parted company politically in almost every way, really. But we're still civil to each other. And surprisingly, he does still seek out my opinions about something, which is I'm surprised about, because I would have thought that he wouldn't value my opinions about anything now, because we disagree about so much now. But he said that he thinks that that social media is the thing that's destroying the West, and if he's right, then I'm part of it. But then, by the same token, he also said that he was very proud of the West during COVID. So so you can take that as part of that general worldview. Um, but he was saying that he doesn't, apart from YouTube, he doesn't consume any social media, and I tried to ignore the implied criticism in that remark. And of course, I am on social media too much. I'm on X far too much, um, and perhaps it's damaging. And of course, you get an exaggerated impression of what's going on, and certainly it's a million miles from this out here. But I still maintain, as grubby as it is, um, it's the canary in the coal mine. What happens on X is happens in the real world 6 months later. Um, And I do see a turner. I do see a turnaround. This is always difficult to say because we've had so many false dawns about so many things. Um, I do see a change in people not being less prepared to put up with the shit that we've put up with for so long. We have setbacks. I mean, what? I mean, oh, Canada. Canada, what did you do? And Australia, they just voted in more bloody globalists. You know, so those were disappointing uh, results. Um, but despite my reservations about Nigel Farage and reform, I mean, they did do extremely well in the local elections. Um, you know, to the extent that the major parties are rattled now, and there are interestingly quite a number of Labour MPs that have broken ranks, um, and they've realised that immigration has to be dealt with. You know, and that we can't. We're not all far right thugs, and that's a Labour Party. There's some people in the Labour Party. Um, so we do have to keep. I mean, you can choose to remove yourself from this, and you know, in a kind of superior way, and think it's all beneath you, and that it's not real life, and that that this is real life. Um, but actually, it's like an early warning system. You know, it does exaggerate things, and it has a you do this doom scrolling, and it does have a negative effect on one personally. Um, but I just to just ignore it as um, but what you say as conspiracy theory and such like, it is to abdicate responsibility really, and we all have responsibilities. You know, I have responsibilities to Mrs. X and to my girls, to my granddaughter, and my new grandchild, which is something that you can't be anything but overjoyed about. Yeah, so she's 3 months pregnant now, so we're looking forward to another one. So there's nothing bad about that, that's for sure. Um, but we all have responsibilities, and we have responsibilities not to let our societies crumble. I mean, I mean, this is the other thing. I mean, England's well over 1,000 years old. It's well over a millennium. Sort of 853 or something like that. Um, King Alfred. Is it really gonna? Is it really gonna finish on my watch? I think that's one of the things that's eating me up a bit. Is that a country that's lasted for over 1,000 years? Is it gonna? Is it gonna? Are we gonna lose it on my watch? I don't think we can leave the battlefield. I just don't think we can. I think I think that's a moral abdication of our responsibilities. And it's entirely possible that it is damaging my life in the here and now, in the moment. And we should all try and live in the moment if we can, at least for some moments. But what's that phrase? If war comes, let it be in my time so my children don't have to fight it. Or however it was eloquently put by somebody a lot more sophisticated than me. But we can't kick this can down the road and hope everything's going to be okay. It's not okay to do that. Anyway, I'm going to try not to think about the end of Western civilization and try and enjoy the sunshine. So perhaps you should do the same. And in the meantime, stay free.